Redditors who witnessed a murder. What is your story? Part 3. My neighborhood is pretty wild, so there are probably even better stories, but the one I remember is this. It was about 5 years ago. This gang leader man, he was a big deal, mafia connections and stuff, had just got released from prison. I don't know much about the backstory, but he had some dirt with a nightclub owner that happened to be my neighbor. The gang attacked the nightclub that night, tables were thrown off, windows. Fire alarm went on, and we obviously heard gunshots back to back. Me and my dad rushed to the balcony, very dumb of us, and we saw this naked guy with only a towel around his waist who was walking out of hammam. Hammam is like a public bath, I'm Turkish, it's common here. The man ran to the nightclub, he was just curious, and then boom. I saw the exact moment he got shot from his chest. We later found out he was the only one who died that night. Nobody inside the nightclub was harmed. I was a freshman at my current high school. I'm a senior now. It was Valentine's Day, but the whole day something felt kinda odd. The fire alarm went off during my second period English class, but it was just a drill. Later in the day, roughly 45 minutes-ish, left before I could go home, the fire alarm went off again. We were all confused but followed procedure. I was on the 3rd floor, so we had to go down a bunch of stairs, but on the way down everyone turned around and was running back. That's when I heard the gunshots. I turned around and headed back to my classroom running. The teacher was trying to unlock the door, they lock themselves when they close, and I look behind me and see the shooter firing in my direction. I looked back and my teacher got the door open, so I ran inside and hid. The shooter was still firing shots and I could hear screaming outside the door. Everything smelled like gunpowder and iron from the amount of blood. We were waiting for police for what felt like hours, but was probably only about 30 minutes until we were rescued. The whole time waiting I could hear someone outside screaming for help, but there was nothing we could do. We just waited. Once they rescued us, they had us line up with our hands on our heads and took us out of the building. There was blood all over the floor and walls. Bodies on the staircase and in the hallways. 17 people died that day. I'll never forget any of it. I didn't directly witness it, but I spoke to the guy after he found his mom murdered by its own father with a hammer. He crushed the woman's skull. Reason was that she wanted to live freely and divorce him. They were Iraqis, so Islam is a thing there. She also started her driver's license. The first day I moved to the town I grew up in, 3 years old. I went to Burger King and saw 2 men get into an argument while I was in line, having to do with a gang rivalry, I believe. And it escalated to the point where one of the men pulled out a gun. And within another minute or two it had been fired off and the other guy was on the ground bleeding out. My mom told me to look away, but that's the most impactful few peeks I've ever snuck. And those few images will always stick with me. Was in an Islamic State suicide attack. 78 fatalities. 500 wounded. The screaming is something that will be with me forever. As a kid, I grew up working with my non-profit parents in a third world orphanage. I saw the director of the orphanage murder 15 babies. She was supposed to order enough beds, food, supplies, etc. from the government for all the babies. And there were about 30 to 35. Instead, she ordered enough for only 15 children. And pocketed the remaining money and let the other 15 die. I don't believe in God. But I believe in hell, and that woman deserves its deepest realms. At my old apartment, my neighbors often had the police called for domestic violence. One day I was sitting outside smoking when I saw the woman come out of the house. It looked like she was sneaking. All of a sudden I heard the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard. I watched her boyfriend drag her into the house by her hair. I immediately called the police. I waited and waited. They never showed. I guess they bumped it to the bottom of the list given the couple's history of violence. I wish they would have showed. Because a few days later her body washed up in a nearby body of water. I wish someone, myself included, could have done more. Bus in Poland with big side mirrors. Went up on the curb a bit when attempting to pull into the bus stop lay-by at the tram station. Mirror took out a guy waiting for the bus. Slammed him in the head and killed him right there. Bus driver tried to drive away. Bus passengers tried to stop him. Bus ran over someone rude, but I don't know if they died too. Our tram had already started moving and left the station. We all dialed 112. And apparently police and ambulances got there pretty fast. I don't know what happened to the bus driver. What I've learned from this thread. Stay the fuck away from bar fights. Nothing good is gonna come out of two intoxicated men or women fighting in places where beer bottles could be broken. Punches could be thrown or shots could be fired. I was on a bus in Tijuana. Maybe 2 to 3 years ago. At a red light in heavy traffic. There was a woman driving a small van next to us. I happened to look up from my phone just in time to see a guy walk up. Dome her. And jog away. Just blood and chunks everywhere. I have seen some pretty gruesome shit on the internet. But seeing it in real life was still a little gut-wrenching. It could have been gang or narco related. But I don't want give baseless speculations. And thank God the window was closed. Because the sound was insanely loud and painful. 2 doors down from the house I grew up in lived an older couple. Their son, 30-ish, came to house sit for a few days while they were on vacation. 2 robbers must have scouted the house and attempted to rob them the day after they left. Little did they know the couple's son was inside and armed. The son heard the break-in and ran downstairs to find the robbers who attempted to flee. He shot one of them a couple of times and the guy ended up dead in the driveway while the other got away. I can still remember the police holding us from leaving our house. Then when passing the neighbor's house to leave the man's body laying there. White wife beater covered in blood. Pool of blood under his chest. Eyes still open. TLDR, neighbor's son shot a robber dead in the driveway. Police left the body uncovered. Tragically. I don't believe this qualifies as a murder. Though I believe it should. Closest definition I could find was depraved heart manslaughter, but I could be wrong. The day before Halloween this year. I was at a red light at the crazy intersection in my neighborhood with one car in front of me. Our light turns green. So the car in front of me starts to slowly accelerate. Quicker than any of us could process. From our left. A mid-sized SUV-type vehicle comes barreling through his now red light at least 3 to 4 seconds after it had turned. He clipped and took off the front bumper of the girl's car in front of me. Lost control of his car. And smashed directly into a grandmother waiting at a bus stop. Killing her instantly. She'd just picked up a pizza for her family and was on her way home. The man's car tipped onto his driver's side. So I'm not sure how he got out as quickly as he did. But he had the gall to start yelling at the girl whose bumper he took off. Asserting it was her fault for being in the intersection during our green light. This was after she'd literally spilled out of her car door wailing, think Hereditary, she couldn't believe she'd been a part of it. I was the first one to call 911. And the operator asked if anyone could perform CPR. I remember telling her that there wasn't anything left of her to perform CPR on. To my knowledge. The police deemed it an accident and nothing happened to the man. As one bystander said to me. We just witnessed that man make the worst mistake of his life. We did. And I hope it never, ever leaves him. It's not exactly murder. Maybe. I guess you can decide. I'll try to make it a fast one. I was a medic in Afghanistan. A few people got injured in an IED blast. One of which was a kid. Around 14 to 15 years old. We had limited resources. So sometimes you can only save a certain number of people. Those who are most likely to be saved. The immediate casualties come first. And sometimes you have to let the others who are too far gone just kinda, sit there. I guess. You make them comfortable and talk to them, but there's not much you can do. Anywho. The reason I equate it to murder is. When we saw what we had in numbers. We realized we could save one. A guy that had lost quite a bit in the blast. And there wasn't much we could do for the kid. So I gave him some pain meds. To help him relax. And help him sleep. And he did. He went to sleep and never got to wake up. It was a murder in the grand scheme depending on your viewpoint. But I truly felt like I was the one dealing the final blow. Even if it was for mercy. He was a local. I never got to learn his name. Or anything about him apart from the short time I spent with him before working on the other casualties. I didn't actually witness the murder-suicide, but I saw the direct aftermath seconds later. I was 6 years old at my babysitter's house after school. The husband came home drunk and demanded he speak with her in the backyard. A little bit afterwards their dog is freaking out demanding it come inside. I went out back and the dog lead me to them. The husband shot my babysitter and then himself. She was gone, but he still had labored breathing before dying in front of me. It's still one of my most vivid memories 21 years later. Halloween, I was trick-or-treating with family. We were at a trailer park and had gone up to a trailer and guy came out and pointed a gun at the kids, later turned out to be a pellet gun. My father was carrying a gun and shot and killed him. I remember being grabbed and running from the scene and the horrible silence at home. The guy who died apparently had been with a prostitute who robbed him after he died, so they thought it was a murder robbery. My father turned himself in and charges were eventually dropped. I was in Terminal 2 in Barcelona airport the morning of March 24, 2015. There were only 3 flights leaving the terminal. And we were all delayed due to fog. 150 people boarded Germanwings Flight 9525. 30 minutes before we boarded our flight. Although I didn't see it happen. We were the last people to see them alive. The first officer crashed the plane into the French Alps, killing himself and murdering the other 149 people on board. It will haunt me for the rest of my life. Thanks for watching.